Okay, so today we're diving into something that I think a lot of us grapple with, and that's the whole idea of how do we actually grow,
Hmm.
right? Like, how does a business actually grow its revenue, and how does that relate to how we as individuals build our wealth?
Yeah, I mean, these are questions that are always top of mind for anyone who's either running a business or just trying to get ahead financially.
Absolutely, and we've got some really interesting perspectives to dig into today. So we've got Ready, Fire, Aim by Michael Masterson, which lays out a really practical framework for scaling a business.
And we'll also be looking at an article that explores this idea that hitting $100,000 in net worth can actually trigger a real mindset shift in how you approach wealth building going forward.
So it's kind of like looking at these two parallel tracks, right? We've got the business growth side with its revenue milestones, and then we've got the personal wealth side with its own kind of benchmarks.
Exactly. And our mission today is to really tease out what's most useful from each of these viewpoints so you can walk away with some actionable insights.
So you can start to see those different areas of your life, maybe in a new light.
Exactly.
All right, so let's jump right into Ready, Fire, Aim, shall we?
Let's do it.
Now, Masterson, he breaks down the entrepreneurial journey into these four revenue-based stages, right? So you've got $0 to $1 million in revenue, then 1 to 10 million, then 10 to 50 million, and finally that 50 to $100 million mark.
And what's so interesting about the way he does this is that he connects these revenue levels to the size of the team you'd typically need at each stage.
It's almost like you can visualize the growth happening,
Yeah.
right? You see the revenue increasing and you see the team expanding alongside it.
Yeah, it really highlights the operational complexity that comes with scaling a business. As more money flows in, you need more people to manage everything effectively,
To keep those wheels turning.
to handle the fulfillment, to do the marketing, to keep the books in order.
Right, all of that.
It really paints a very concrete picture of what growth actually looks like in practice.
And I think one of the most valuable takeaways, especially from the early stages of Ready, Fire, Aim, is this emphasis on doing over planning.
That classic idea of just getting started, not getting bogged down in analysis paralysis.
Right, Masterson, he's all about getting your offering out there as quickly as possible, seeing what the market responds to, and then refining it as you go.
It's that whole build, measure, learn cycle. It's about gathering data through action, not just sitting around theorizing.
So it's really learning by doing, instead of trying to map out every single detail beforehand.
Precisely because in the real world, you never know what's going to work until you try it.
And he makes a really interesting point about what comes after you've got that first successful product or service, right? Like a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we tend to get really excited about the next shiny object.
Oh yeah, we're always chasing that next big idea.
Exactly. But Masterson actually advises against that initially.
Interesting. So what does he suggest instead?
Well, he says you should really focus on squeezing every bit of juice out of that initial winner.
Okay, so really explore all the different markets where that product or service could potentially thrive.
Exactly, because you've already proven that it works.
Yeah.
So now it's about expanding its reach before you start spreading yourself too thin with new offerings.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about building a solid foundation before you start adding new layers.
Right, it's about depth before breadth.
And, for those of us who are idea happy, as Masterson calls us,
The serial innovators.
right, it can be a real challenge to stay focused on one thing for that long.
I know, I struggle with that sometimes.
Me too. But the point he's making is so important because it speaks to the power of focus and making the most of your limited resources, especially when you're starting out.
When every dollar and every hour counts.
Absolutely.
Now, it is worth mentioning that Masterson's background is primarily in the information publishing industry.
Right. He's built his career around selling books courses and other informational products.
So while those core principles of Ready, Fire, Aim, that action-oriented approach, and the staged growth model, those definitely apply to a wider range of businesses.
Sure. I mean, the idea of testing, iterating, and scaling is relevant across industries.
But he does acknowledge that the specific revenue figures and team size benchmarks, those might look a bit different if your focus is primarily on physical goods, retail, or service-based businesses.
It's about taking those core principles and adapting them to your own unique context, right?
Exactly. So it's not about taking those numbers as gospel, but understanding the underlying philosophy and the stages of growth that he outlines.
And I think the overarching message there, that emphasis on getting started, learning from your efforts, and then strategically scaling up as you gain traction, that's something that's universally applicable.
It's a mindset shift, really. It's about seeing your journey as one with distinct phases and evolving priorities.
Which brings us to that other fascinating piece of the puzzle we talked about. The idea of how hitting $100,000 in net worth can fundamentally change your perspective on wealth building.
It's funny how much of the conversation around personal finance seems to revolve around reaching that initial six-figure mark, whether it's in income or net worth.
It's like it's seen as this magic threshold.
Like once you hit that number, you've made it.
Right. But there's often less discussion about what happens after that point.
It's like we reach that first milestone and then it's kind of radio silence on what it takes to really build wealth on a larger scale.
And that's what makes this article so intriguing, because it really digs into that often overlooked territory. What happens after you hit that $100,000 mark.
It's almost like reaching that first milestone is just the beginning of a new chapter.
Exactly. It's not the end of the journey, it's the start of a new phase.
And this article suggests that crossing that threshold can actually trigger a shift in your mindset.
Like you start to think differently about money and the possibilities that are open to you.
It got me thinking, where does that $100,000 net worth milestone typically fall within Masterson's revenue stages for an entrepreneur?
That's a great question, because it highlights the fact that business success as measured by revenue and personal financial success as measured by net worth aren't always perfectly aligned.
Right. You could have a business that's generating a ton of revenue, but with really high operating costs. So the owner might not actually hit that $100,000 net worth mark until much later.
Exactly. Or on the flip side, you could have someone who's running a really lean and profitable business, maybe on a smaller scale, but they're able to accumulate a substantial net worth pretty early on.
So it's not a one-to-one correlation?
Not at all. It really depends on a variety of factors, like your profit margins, your personal spending habits, and your investment strategy.
And I think that's where the idea of a mindset shift comes into play, because as you start to build wealth beyond that initial $100,000,
your approach likely needs to evolve as well.
Right. The strategies that got you that first milestone might not be the same ones that will take you to $1 million or $10 million in net worth.
It's like you're leveling up in a video game. The challenges get more complex, and you need to develop new skills and strategies to overcome them.
And I wonder if there are any parallels between that personal mindset shift and the strategic adjustments that businesses need to make as they move through Masterson's revenue stages.
Oh, absolutely. I think there are some really interesting connections there. For example, in that initial $0 to $1 million revenue phase, there's often a huge emphasis on hustle and direct sales. It's all about getting those first customers and proving your concept.
Right, you're wearing all the hats, you're doing everything yourself.
Exactly. But as the business scales and aims for that $10 to $50 million range, the focus often shifts towards team building systems and strategic partnerships.
You need to delegate, you need to build infrastructure, you need to think more strategically about growth.
And I think that's similar to what happens on the personal wealth side. Those early stages might be all about careful budgeting, consistent saving, and dipping your toes into investing.
Right, building those foundational habits.
But as you aim for those larger wealth goals, your approach might evolve to include more sophisticated investment strategies, a different tolerance for risk, and maybe even exploring entrepreneurial ventures of your own.
So it's about recognizing that the game changes as the numbers get bigger.
Precisely. And it's about being prepared to adapt and evolve your strategies along the way.
It almost feels like we're looking at two sides of the same coin, right? Whether it's growing a business or growing your personal wealth. The underlying principles are surprisingly similar.
It's all about setting clear goals, developing effective strategies, adapting to challenges, and cultivating the right mindset.
And one of the key takeaways, I think, is that neither of these frameworks offers a one-size-fits-all prescription for success.
Right, they're not magic formulas.
They're more like lenses through which you can view your own journey.
They offer potential benchmarks to consider, and they highlight the fact that the challenges and opportunities you face will likely change as you progress.
They give you a roadmap, but it's up to you to navigate the terrain.
Exactly, and to make choices that align with your own values and goals.
So let's do a quick recap, shall we, just to bring everything together.
Good.
So we started with Masterson's Ready, Fire, Aim, which gave us that really actionable stage-by-stage view of how a business can scale its revenue.
And that framework really emphasizes the importance of early action testing and adapting your approach as you grow.
Then we looked at this idea that reaching $100,000 in net worth can be a real turning point in your personal wealth building journey.
Right, potentially leading to a shift in your mindset and your long-term financial goals.
And what's so valuable about looking at these two perspectives side by side is that it allows you to see potential patterns and insights that you might not notice if you were just focused on one or the other.
It helps you connect the dots between business growth and personal wealth accumulation.
Because ultimately, they're both journeys with distinct phases, and both require that ongoing learning and adaptation.
It's all about growth and evolution.
Now, here's a final thought for you to chew on.
I like it.
Remember that ready, fire, aim principle, that idea of taking action, quickly learning from the results, and iterating as you go.
The build, measure, learn loop.
Exactly. Now, how could you apply that same principle not just to your business ideas, but to your personal financial strategies as well?
That's an interesting question.
What small experiments could you run in your own financial life? Maybe try a new budgeting method, explore a different investment approach, or even test out a side hustle.
It's all about treating your finances like a laboratory. You know, testing different hypotheses and seeing what yields the best results.
Because what works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. So it's about finding what works best for you and move you closer to your financial goals.
And on a related note, we encourage you to think about which of these frameworks resonates most strongly with where you are right now and where you want to be.
Do you feel more drawn to the idea of scaling a business through those revenue stages, or are you more focused on hitting those key personal net worth milestones?
There's no right or wrong answer. It's about figuring out what aligns best with your current situation and your aspirations.
And then once you've got that clarity, you can start to think about the potential challenges and opportunities that might arise at each stage.
So you can be prepared to navigate your own unique path to growth and achievement.
Whether that's in your business or in your personal finances or both.
Because ultimately, it's all about progress, right?
It's about constantly striving to improve and to reach your full potential.
And who knows, maybe by applying some of these principles and experimenting along the way, you might even surpass those initial goals and achieve even greater things than you ever thought possible.
Now that's an inspiring thought.
So keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing yourself. And we'll see you on the next deep dive.
Sounds good.